When we think about criminals, we often picture reckless people who leave behind chaos, violence, and sloppy mistakes. But history has also seen criminals who stood out for their astonishing intelligence and creativity. These weren't ordinary lawbreakers, they were masterminds who planned every detail, outsmarted entire police departments, and sometimes even influenced governments. In this video, we'll count down the 10 smartest criminals of all time. From masters of disguise to brilliant escape artists, each of them left behind stories so unbelievable they sound like Hollywood movies. Stay until the end because number 1 was so ingenious that the FBI still studies his case to this day. 1. Frank Abagnale, the master of disguise. Frank Abagnale's story is legendary. At only 16 years old in the 1960s, he began forging checks and quickly realized he had a gift for deception. Posing as a Pan Am pilot, he traveled more than 1 million miles around the world for free. He stayed at luxury hotels, ate at the finest restaurants, and was treated like royalty, all while never once flying a plane. But he didn't stop there. Abagnale later impersonated a doctor and even a lawyer, passing the Louisiana bar exam after only weeks of self-study. His schemes fooled banks into handing over millions, and even when he was caught, he still managed daring escapes, once slipping through a plane bathroom during extradition. Eventually, he was arrested in France and served time in multiple countries, but here's the twist. After prison, the US government actually recruited him. Abagnale went on to work with the FBI, teaching agents how to catch forgers and con artists. His life was so extraordinary that it inspired the blockbuster movie Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. 2. Richard Lee McNair, the escape artist. Richard McNair is one of the most notorious prison escapees in American history. Convicted of murder, burglary, and attempted murder of police officers, he was locked up in maximum security facilities. Yet he still managed to slip away not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. His most famous escape happened in 2006. McNair was working in a prison warehouse and constructed a makeshift escape pod, a mailbag-sized box with an air vent. He sealed himself inside and had the box shipped right out of the prison gates. Hours later, guards realized one package was missing. But by then, McNair was already gone. He remained on the run for over a year, traveling across the United States, cutting his hair, growing a mustache, and blending in. What makes his story even crazier is that he was stopped by police during his escape, casually chatted with them, and convinced them he was just out for a jog. It wasn't until later that they realized they had let a fugitive walk away. 3. Charles Sobhraj, the Serpent. Nicknamed the Serpent for his ability to slither out of any situation, Charles Sobhraj was a master con man in the 1970s. Operating across Thailand, Nepal, and India, he targeted Western tourists, charming them with his charisma before drugging and robbing them. Some victims never made it home, but Sobhraj's true talent was escape. In 1976, after being captured, he staged a prison break that looked like something out of a movie. He threw a party inside the jail, drugged the guards and inmates, and simply walked out. He was eventually recaptured, but the legend of the Serpent was born. His ability to manipulate people was so strong that even decades later, some admirers described him as magnetic. Netflix even made a series about his crimes, showing how his intelligence was both fascinating and terrifying. 4. Willie Sutton, the gentleman bank robber. Willie Sutton, active during the early 20th century, was one of America's most successful bank robbers. Over his 40-year career, he stole an estimated $2 million, worth tens of millions today. But what set him apart wasn't just the money. It was his style. Sutton was known for never killing anyone and for relying on disguises instead of violence. He dressed as a guard, a policeman, and even a maintenance worker, using his costumes to walk straight into vaults. One of his disguises was so convincing that when police released his photo, people thought it was a picture of an actual officer. Sutton also became famous for his witty remark. When asked why he robbed banks, he simply said, "Because that's where the money is." Despite numerous arrests, he escaped prison 3 times, once using a smuggled gun and another time climbing prison walls with a ladder made of bed sheets. Sutton's brainpower made him a criminal folk hero, admired even by those who worked to catch him. 5. Leonardo Notarbartolo, the heist of the century. In 2003, Italian thief Leonardo Notarbartolo orchestrated one of the greatest heists in modern history, the Antwerp diamond heist. Antwerp, Belgium is the diamond capital of the world, and its vault was considered impenetrable. It had heat sensors, magnetic locks, seismic detectors, and a private security force. But Notarbartolo and his crew planned for over 2 years. They rented an office near the vault, studied guard schedules, and created duplicate keys. On the night of the heist, they bypassed every alarm, every lock, and every camera. By the morning, they had stolen more than $100 million worth of diamonds, gold, and jewelry. Most of the loot has never been recovered. Authorities called it the heist of the century, and even experts admitted that the planning was so precise it could have rivaled military operations. 6. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, King of Tunnels. The infamous leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, El Chapo became a billionaire through drug trafficking. But his real claim to fame was his escapes. The most shocking one came in 2015 when he vanished from a maximum security prison. Under his cell, his men had dug a mile-long tunnel with lights, ventilation, and even a modified motorcycle on rails to speed him out. The tunnel ended in a small construction site outside the prison, allowing Guzman to vanish into thin air. It was like a scene from a spy film, and it embarrassed the Mexican government so badly that it became international news. El Chapo was eventually recaptured, but his escape cemented his reputation as a criminal mastermind who could command engineering feats while sitting behind bars. 7. George Blake, the escaped spy. George Blake was a British double agent who spied for the Soviet Union during the Cold War. In 1961, he was sentenced to 42 years in prison, one of the longest sentences ever given in the UK at the time. But Blake wasn't going to sit quietly. In 1966, with the help of fellow prisoners and outside accomplices, he sawed through the bars of his cell, climbed the wall using a rope, and disappeared into the night. He was secretly smuggled across Europe, eventually reaching Moscow, where he lived comfortably until his death in 2020. His escape embarrassed British intelligence so badly that it became a case study in espionage failures. 8. Arthur Barry, the gentleman thief. Arthur Barry operated in the 1920s and was dubbed the most celebrated jewel thief of all time. But what made him unique was his charm. Barry never used violence, and he often apologized to his victims during robberies. On one occasion, he even returned sentimental jewelry to a woman because it had no resale value but meant a lot to her. His victims included millionaires, politicians, and celebrities, but many later said they couldn't help but like him. After serving time, Barry became a symbol of the idea that even criminals could have honor among thieves. 9. Albert Spaggiari, the criminal engineer. Albert Spaggiari masterminded the 1976 Société Générale bank heist in Nice, France. His plan was like something out of a movie. He and his team tunneled into the bank's vault over weeks, crawling through the sewers and drilling through concrete. When they finally broke in, they stole the equivalent of $30 million in cash and valuables. What made it even more shocking was his escape. Arrested months later, Spaggiari jumped out of a judge's window during questioning, landed on a parked car, hopped on a waiting motorcycle, and disappeared. He was never caught again. 10. John Dillinger, Depression-era legend. John Dillinger was America's most famous gangster during the Great Depression. To some, he was a ruthless bank robber. To others, a Robin Hood figure who represented rebellion against corrupt banks. Dillinger robbed more than 24 banks, often escaping police shootouts unharmed. He became infamous for his prison escapes, once carving a pistol from wood, painting it black with shoe polish, and using it to bluff his way past armed guards. His charm and boldness made him a folk hero to struggling Americans of the 1930s. He was eventually betrayed and killed by the FBI in 1934, but his legend has never died. From brilliant forgers to daring escape artists, these criminals proved that intelligence can be just as dangerous as violence. Which of these masterminds impressed you the most? Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from history's darkest minds.